I should have known something was wrong the moment I stepped into the house that evening, but I was too distracted by the noise, the lights, and the forced excitement that my mother in law loved to manufacture. It was her birthday, and she had been planning this party for months. A grand celebration filled with people I barely knew and people she wished I didn't know. She never liked me, not from the very beginning, but she had learned to hide her contempt in public, smoothing her words like silk while letting her eyes say what her lips didn't dare. That night, she didn't bother to hide it. The moment she saw me standing near the doorway, hesitant, clutching the small gift I'd carefully wrapped, her expression tightened as if I were a stain on her perfect evening. "Why is she here?" she muttered, loudly enough for people near her to hear, and a few turned their heads, pretending not to listen, but soaking in every detail. My husband froze beside me. I felt him stiffen, but he didn't move, didn't speak, didn't defend me. That silence stung more than her words ever could. I took a slow breath and forced myself to step forward. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of seeing me falter. But she didn't stop. She swept toward us with a strange, sharp smile, her voice carrying easily over the music. "You know, dear, this is a family celebration," she said, placing her manicured hand on my arm as if guiding me. No, pushing me toward the hallway. "Maybe you should leave before things get awkward." People fell silent. Conversations faded. My cheeks burned. I looked at my husband again, begging with my eyes for him to say something, anything. But he only swallowed, his jaw tightening. It was as if he didn't recognize me at all. My mother-in-law leaned closer, her whisper dripping with venom. "Go home, for everyone's sake." My throat tightened, but before I could respond, the front door opened again, and a courier stepped inside, holding a small white envelope. "Delivery for Mrs. Collins," he announced. My mother-in-law turned sharply, irritated. "I'm busy," she hissed. "Give it to someone else." But the courier shook his head. "I was told to deliver this directly to you and only you." Something flickered in her eyes. Confusion, caution, then something darker. She took the envelope quickly, almost snatching it from his hand, and disappeared into the dining room with stiff, hurried steps. The room buzzed with curiosity. My husband finally exhaled, as if whatever had just happened relieved him in a way I didn't understand. I felt cold, detached, exhausted. I turned to leave, unable to stand there any longer. And I would have left had it not been for the scream that shattered the house seconds later. A scream of pure, raw, disbelieving shock. Then another. I stopped mid-step, heads whipped toward the dining room, the music cut off. For a moment, the whole world seemed to hold its breath. My husband rushed toward the sound, and instinct pulled me after him. Guests gathered in the doorway, whispering. I pushed through the crowd until I finally saw her, my mother-in-law, standing in the center of the room, trembling violently, the envelope torn open in her hands. A single sheet of paper lay on the floor at her feet. Her face was drained of all color, eyes wide with horror. And then she looked at me. Not with hate, not with superiority, but with something I had never seen from her before. Fear. "Who sent this?" she choked out. No one answered. She staggered back, gripping the table for support. My husband picked up the paper and scanned it, confusion shifting slowly into disbelief. Then he turned toward me, his voice barely audible. It's a DNA test." My heart slammed against my ribs. DNA? For what? He swallowed hard, his eyes locked on mine, terrified to speak but unable not to. For me." The guests gasped. The room erupted in murmurs. My mother-in-law shook her head violently, grabbing the paper from his hands. No, this is a lie, a mistake. This can't be real." But my husband whispered, as if the truth were tearing through him. "This says I'm not her biological son." Time stopped. For all of us. My mother-in-law collapsed into a chair, burying her face in her hands. My husband stood frozen, the paper trembling in his grip. And me, I felt the air leave my lungs as a chilling thought crawled into my mind. Someone sent this. Someone who wanted this truth revealed.
At this exact moment, someone who knew, someone who wanted her to break. And as the guests stared in horror, as whispers sharpened into accusations, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a coincidence. This was only the beginning.
I should have known the moment I stepped through the doorway that something was wrong, because every pair of eyes in the room shifted toward me, then away, like they were afraid to be caught staring. It was supposed to be a celebration, a warm family gathering filled with laughter, music, and glasses clinking. Instead, the air felt tight and heavy, as if everyone had been holding their breath long before I arrived. My mother-in-law, Evelyn, stood near the center of the living room, wrapped in her usual elegance, pearls perfectly aligned, dress immaculate, expression sharp enough to cut glass. She didn't smile when she saw me, not even a polite one. Instead, she whispered something to the woman beside her, who glanced at me with barely concealed pity. That was my first warning. The second came moments later when I handed my coat to the host and tried to step farther into the room. Evelyn moved quickly, too quickly for someone who claimed she never rushed. She intercepted me like a guard blocking an intruder. "You're early," she said, her tone an accusation rather than an observation. "I thought I told you to come later." I blinked, genuinely confused. "You said 6. It's 6." She looked me up and down, her lips tightening. "Well, things have changed." I tried to remain calm. She had never liked me, never approved, never accepted that her son had chosen someone who didn't come from money and didn't play by the unspoken rules of her pristine, curated world. But tonight, her coldness had a different edge to it, something almost frantic beneath the surface. Guests watched us from the corners of their eyes, pretending not to. I forced a polite smile. "It's fine. I can help set things up." "No," she snapped. "You can't." The room fell silent around us, the tension suddenly visible. My husband, Daniel, hadn't arrived yet. He'd been stuck at work and promised he'd follow shortly. If he had been there, maybe things would have been different, or maybe not. Evelyn leaned closer, her voice low, but sharp enough to be heard by anyone within a few steps. "Maybe it's better if you wait outside." For a moment, I thought I had misheard her. "Outside?" "Yes," she said, as if suggesting something perfectly reasonable. "You know these events are delicate, and tonight is about family." Her words punched the air out of my lungs. I was family. I was Daniel's wife, but she said it as if I were an outsider, a stranger, an inconvenience. "Evelyn," I said quietly, "what's going on?" She stiffened, chin lifting. "Nothing you need to be involved in." I felt the heat rising in my face. People were watching, whispering, pretending not to listen. One of Daniel's cousins looked at me with genuine concern, but even she didn't step forward. No one ever did when Evelyn was involved. She raised her voice just slightly, enough to make sure everyone heard. "I don't think you should stay. Not tonight." The humiliation washed over me, cold and cutting. I felt myself shrinking, collapsing inward, wondering if she truly hated me enough to throw me out in front of her entire extended family. Then the front door opened. Daniel stepped inside, shaking off the cold, his smile fading the second he saw the scene in front of him. "What's going on?" he asked, moving toward me immediately, placing a protective hand on my back. Evelyn gave him a look of tight, practiced sorrow. "Daniel, sweetheart, this is complicated. I didn't want her to be here before we had the chance to talk." "Talk about what?" he challenged. His mother hesitated, then sighed theatrically. "The test. It arrived today." My stomach dropped. "What test?" She looked at me, then at Daniel, and then at the fascinated circle of family members pretending to mind their own business. "The DNA test." That was the moment everything shifted. The room seemed to tilt, sounds muffling into a distant hum. My heart slammed against my ribs as 1,000 terrifying possibilities flashed through my mind. Daniel stiffened beside me. "Mom," he said sharply, "what test?"
Evelyn pressed her hand to her chest in false delicacy. "The one I ordered." Silence exploded in the room. My breath caught painfully. "You ordered a DNA test? For who?" Evelyn's gaze locked onto mine, unblinking, merciless. "For you." A collective shiver passed through the guests. My pulse roared in my ears. "Me? Why?" And then she said the words that would shatter the night, rip open old wounds, and unravel secrets no one was prepared to face. Words that marked the beginning of the darkest, most painful chapter of my life. "Because," she said coldly, "I don't believe you are who you claim to be."
I didn't sleep the night after the argument. Her words kept replaying in my head like an echo I couldn't escape. You don't belong in this family. It didn't matter that the guests pretended not to hear her or that my husband tried to smooth it over with an awkward laugh. The damage was done. My mother-in-law had said it loud enough for the entire room to absorb the humiliation. I sat on the edge of the bed in the dark, replaying every interaction I'd ever had with her, searching for the moment everything changed. Maybe it had always been this way, and I was only now seeing it clearly. Maybe she had never accepted me to begin with. By morning, I had convinced myself that I wouldn't let her see me break. I walked into the kitchen with my head lifted, even though my heart felt like it was dragging behind me. My husband, Daniel, was already there, rubbing his temples and staring into his coffee as if the steam could give him answers. "She didn't mean it," he muttered without looking at me, but even he didn't sound convinced. I didn't respond. Instead, I got ready for the day, pretending the quiet wasn't heavy between us. What neither of us knew then was that the real storm hadn't even started. It arrived 3 days later in a plain envelope slid under our door. No handwriting, no return address, just our names typed on the front in bold black letters. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a sealed DNA report. I felt the blood drain from my face as I handed it to Daniel. He frowned, confused, then tore open the seal. For several seconds, he didn't move, didn't breathe. His eyes skimmed the page again and again, growing wider each time. This can't be right," he whispered. His hands shook, his face drained of color, and before I could ask what it meant, he turned the page toward me. My entire world blurred. My chest tightened as if someone had wrapped a fist around my lungs and squeezed. The test didn't have my name. It had his, and hers, his mother's. Only the conclusion was clear, printed in heavy letters that burned themselves into my memory. Non-matched. Maternal relationship? Excluded. For a moment, I thought I was misunderstanding, but the meaning was too stark, too horrifying to dismiss. The woman who had spent years calling me outsider, stranger, not one of us, wasn't even his biological mother. I stared at Daniel, waiting for him to make sense of it, to tell me it was a mistake. But he sank into the nearest chair, burying his face in his hands. I don't know what this means. My whole life, everything I knew." His voice broke. I felt the ground shift beneath me. Suddenly, every look, every cruel comment, every attempt to push me away took on a new color. She hadn't been protecting her family from me, she had been protecting herself from the truth. And someone out there wanted us to know it. But who? And why now? Before we could speak another word, a sharp knock rattled the door. We both froze. Another envelope slid underneath. A second one. I rushed toward it, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. This time there was handwriting across the front, shaky and uneven, as if written in a rush. "You need to see the rest." Daniel opened it with trembling fingers. Inside were photographs, old, faded, torn at the edges. A hospital room, a nurse holding 2 babies, a bracelet tag with his date of birth, and another with a different name entirely. A woman, his mother, crying in the corner while a doctor spoke urgently to a man whose face was blurred by motion. And in the final photo, the one that made my knees nearly give out, there were 2 newborns lying side by side. One tagged with her last name, one tagged with someone else's. The dates were identical. The babies,
interchangeable. A baby switch, Daniel whispered, horror washing over him. But why? And who would? Before he could finish, his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number lit up the screen. I know what she did, and you deserve to know too. Meet me tonight. Come alone. His hands tightened around the phone, knuckles white. My pulse quickened as fear coiled in my stomach. There was no name, no location, just a time. Midnight. I looked at Daniel, waiting for him to hesitate, to tell me it was too dangerous, too strange, too sudden. But his eyes had changed. There was a spark in them I had never seen before. Pain mixed with fury, betrayal mixed with desperation. We're going. We're finding out the truth. And when he said it, I realized something chilling. This wasn't about me being an outsider anymore. This was bigger, darker, older than both of us. This was a secret someone had hidden for decades, and the person responsible was still out there, watching, waiting, ready for us to find them. The night of the meeting would be the night everything broke open. His family, his past, the lies that shaped all of us, and nothing afterward would ever be the same.
I noticed the way she watched me long before she ever said a word. My mother-in-law had a talent for turning joy into discomfort, and that evening, at her precious annual family party, her attention felt sharper than usual, almost predatory. I tried to stay close to my husband, Mark, pretending everything was normal, pretending I didn't see how she whispered into different relatives' ears whenever I entered the room, how their eyes flicked toward me with a strange mix of pity and suspicion. I kept telling myself I was imagining it. I wanted to believe that. But when she suddenly marched toward me in the middle of the living room, her voice slicing through laughter and music, I knew I hadn't been paranoid at all. You need to leave, she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Conversations died instantly. Glasses froze halfway to lips. This party is for family, real family. I felt my stomach drop. Mark stepped forward, tense. Mom, what are you doing? She lifted a hand, silencing him with the smugness of someone who believes she finally has proof of something she has always wanted to believe. Her eyes locked onto mine. Cold. Victorious. She shouldn't be here, she repeated, and the room vibrated with gasps. I heard my name fall from someone's lips in a whisper. She knows. The room felt smaller, tighter, the walls pressing inward. I forced myself to stay still. Why, I asked softly, shouldn't I be here? She took pleasure in the moment. I saw it. She let the silence stretch, savoring the weight of each second before she finally spoke. Because you don't belong in this family. And soon, everyone will know why. Mark grabbed her arm, furious, but she yanked it away. No, she needs to hear this. They all do. Someone shut off the music, making the tension even more suffocating. My palms were sweating, my heart pounding almost painfully against my ribs. I scanned the room, looking for support, but I mostly found confusion and fear. Fear of her. Fear of what she was about to reveal. Fear of what it might mean for me. Mom, stop, Mark said through clenched teeth. There is nothing to stop, she retorted. You have a right to know the truth, Mark. This woman, her fingers stabbed the air toward me, has been lying to you, lying to all of us. My breath caught. What lie? I whispered. Her smile was thin, cruel, triumphant. The one she's been hiding since the day she married you. Then she lifted a small envelope, sealed but creased up in edges, like it had been held and opened and studied far too many times. My stomach twisted the moment I saw it. I didn't know what was inside, but something deep in my bones reacted to it. Do you know what this is? She asked, waving the envelope slightly. I said nothing, but I felt the blood drain from my face. She smirked. A DNA test, and it proves everything. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. My legs felt weak.
my ears ringing. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. She mistook my shock for guilt. "Oh, yes," she said, stepping closer, lowering her voice, but making sure every person heard. "You didn't think your little secret could stay hidden forever, did you?" Mark stared at me, torn between defending me and fearing what she was implying. "Mom, what exactly did you test?" She held the envelope against her chest dramatically, like a trophy. "Let's just say," she purred, "that someone in this room isn't who she claims to be." The accusation hit me like a physical blow. My lungs squeezed, my skin prickled with cold sweat. I had secrets. Everyone does, but nothing that warranted this level of spectacle, nothing that could justify the hatred she was displaying. And yet something inside me trembled because I realized in that terrifying moment that she believed every word she was saying. And if the DNA test wasn't fake, then someone else had orchestrated this, someone who wanted to destroy me. "You don't have to listen to this," Mark said to me, grabbing my hand, but I pulled away, staring at his mother. "Open it," I said, surprising myself. She blinked, clearly not expecting me to call her bluff. "If you're so convinced, open it." The whole room held its breath. She hesitated. For the first time that night, I saw uncertainty flicker in her eyes. A small flicker, but it was there. Then she tore it open. Her fingers trembled. Her eyes scanned the page. Her face changed slowly, subtly, shifting from triumph to confusion, to shock, to something that almost looked like fear. The room leaned forward. "Mom," said Mark. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Something in my chest tightened, because whatever she had expected wasn't what she had found. And that meant the truth was much bigger than her petty hatred, much darker. And it didn't come from me. Her fingers loosened, and the paper slipped from her hand. Mark caught it before it hit the floor. His eyes moved across the page. His jaw dropped. "Mom," he said, "what did you do?" She backed away, shaking her head slowly, her face pale. "No, no, that can't be right. That's impossible." Mark looked at me, his eyes wide, stunned, and terrified not of me, but for me. Because whatever was written on that paper wasn't just about me. It was about him, his family, his entire life. And in that moment, before he could speak, before anyone could move, before I could demand to know what the test revealed, I realized something chilling. The real secret hadn't been mine at all. It had been theirs, and someone who knew exactly what they were doing, had chosen this moment to expose it.
When the envelope finally arrived, no one wanted to be the first to open it. It lay in the center of the dining table like a quiet bomb, small and harmless looking, yet capable of destroying every illusion this family had clung to. His mother-in-law, who only days ago had tried to kick her out of the party, stood rigidly by the counter, pretending she wasn't trembling. Her husband hovered behind her, his face pale, as if the truth inside that envelope might rewrite more than just one life. She sat down slowly, her heartbeat pounding in her ears so loudly it drowned out every breath in the room. The last party, the shouting, the accusations, the humiliations, everything replayed in her memory with ruthless clarity. She remembered the moment the mother-in-law grabbed her arm and hissed that she didn't belong, that she should leave before she embarrassed the family again. And she remembered the moment only hours later when a quiet relative pulled her aside and told her the truth, that the woman who hated her wasn't protecting the family, she was protecting herself. That memory made her hands steady as she picked up the envelope. Her husband leaned closer, voice barely breaking a whisper. "Whatever it says, I'm with you." She wanted to believe him, but she also remembered how he stayed silent while his mother humiliated her in front of everyone. Silence could be as cruel as any word. She tore the envelope open. The paper felt heavier than it should have, as if the truth itself resisted being revealed. She scanned the top lines first, the sterile medical language, the clinical formatting, until her eyes reached the section that mattered. And then everything stopped. The air, the room,
her pulse. It was her husband who spoke first, his voice cracking, barely holding itself together. "Mom, what did you do?" His mother's face went white. "It's wrong," she stammered. "It has to be wrong." But it wasn't. The DNA test confirmed what she had feared and suspected all at once. The child she was carrying was undeniably her husband's. The test proved fidelity, proved trust, proved innocence. But that wasn't the part that shook the room. The real shock was the second result, the one connected to the family medical comparison panel the clinic offered automatically, a test she hadn't even realized was included, the one that matched DNA across existing family profiles on file. The child was biologically related, but not in the way everyone assumed. Her husband was the father, but his mother was not the grandmother. The room spun as understanding shattered across every face. Her husband stared at his mother, confusion turning into horror as the truth connected itself without mercy. "You lied," he whispered. "My whole life, you lied." His mother-in-law staggered back, gripping the counter as if the room tilted beneath her. She shook her head, but denial collapsed almost instantly under the weight of the evidence. "I did it for the family," she choked out. "You were never supposed to know." Her husband's voice turned raw. "So my father isn't my father?" Silence. A silence that confirmed everything. Tears slipped down her cheek, not for the test, not for the humiliation she had endured, but for the man standing across from her, who looked like a child suddenly lost in a maze he never knew existed. She moved toward him slowly, carefully, as if approaching a wounded animal. "I'm here," she whispered. "I'm not going anywhere." For the first time since the chaos began, he didn't pull away. His mother-in-law tried to speak again, but he held up his hand, not angrily, but with a quiet finality that cut deeper than shouting. "You lied to destroy her, to protect your lie, but the truth survived you." She said nothing. What could she say? The DNA test had not only proven his wife innocent, it had exposed the secret she had burned half a lifetime protecting. The three of them stood in that suffocating silence until the mother-in-law finally walked out of the room, her steps unsteady, her carefully crafted world collapsing behind her. She and her husband stayed together at the table long after the door clicked shut, their hands intertwined, their breaths shaky but unified. "I'm sorry," he whispered, "for not standing up for you, for doubting you, for letting her hurt you." She rested her head against his shoulder, exhaustion and relief crashing over her at once. "We start over," she murmured, but this time with the truth. Outside, the world was still, quiet, calm. Inside, the truth had detonated everything, but in the rubble, something new began to grow. Something real, something theirs. And for the first time since the nightmare began, she felt hope strong enough to breathe again.